Hey everybody, Derek Judd, the Cowboy Criminologist, here with Cowboy Criminology. Y'all, it's been a big couple of weeks. As I explained to y'all about 2 weeks ago, I was going to be out of town uh, doing some medical testing and trying to trying to get some relief for some chronic pain that no matter what I do, I just can't get to go away. But I think we're on the downhill slope of that. But the reactions to the Sandra Doorley videos have just been extreme. In less than 2 weeks, picked up around 40 new subscribers, which thank y'all so very much. It's always so nice to pick up subscribers and people who stumble upon my channel either because it came up in their feeds or it was shared with them. But however you come to find out about Cowboy Criminology, I'm just glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're watching. The comments were spot on. It's a little intimidating sometimes because some of the questions are very pointed and makes it very difficult because I know if I step outside myself, I know if I misstep, say something wrong, I'm going to get called out on it. So I want to be very careful about that. So the channel's picked up. I think there were almost 3,000 views between the two Sandra Doorley videos, or no, a little over 2,000 views between the two Sandra Doorley videos. So that's awesome right there. So I was thinking about just kind of letting that last Sandra Doorley video just kind of stand by itself and move on to something else because crime is one of the only recession-proof professions. That's why police officers and correctional officers always have jobs. But I saw a feed for Save Rochester, and it was a group that was putting together a petition where they're seeking to remove Sandra Doorley from office. And y'all know my opinion, and judging by the opinions of most of y'all, we're pretty much of the same mind. She doesn't belong there. And I went into the virtual meeting, and I didn't interact with anybody. I didn't post anything. I just wanted to hear everybody's thoughts. And unfortunately, like a lot of these things, the virtual forum really fell apart because it pretty much was divided into two camps. It was people who wanted to focus on Sandra Doorley as the district attorney needing to be removed because of her egregious overstepping and her attempt to circumvent law enforcement. And there was another group who was saying, well, this is a racial issue. This would have been different had Sandra Doorley been a black male or a black female, and it really devolved. And so I was sitting there and I was watching that, and I really wasn't sure how to think about it other than, that's the problem with a lot of these grassroots types of things, is that once you step outside of your main goal and you lose track of what the main goal is and you try to add additional motive and purpose into what your ultimate goal is, everything tends to fall apart because people can't come together, and they end up actually providing a defense for people in these types of situations like Sandra Doorley. And so with a lot of these things, you have to have historical knowledge. And so I was curious because up until a few weeks ago, I didn't really know anything about Sandra Doorley. I don't live in New York, by the grace of God. And so I didn't know anything about her. So I started doing some, doing that, internet sleuthing stuff. And I found out that she was originally elected as a Democrat and switched her party to being a Republican. And this is apropos of absolutely nothing, but I think if you're somebody over the age of 25 and you switch your party affiliation, I don't think either party should really take you very seriously. Um, just, you know, my 2 cents for whatever you think it's worth, which is probably less than 2 cents. But with Sandra Doorley, in 2020, during the Black Lives Matter protest and during all the social unrest and COVID, Sandra Doorley actually came out and was saying, "Hey, you know what? There have been missteps. We need accountability. We need transparency." That is the platform that she ran on. That is the platform that she promised. And something clicked in me. And now I think I have a better understanding of the racial component during the Save Rochester meeting. It was because she promised transparency, she promised accountability, and she promised to keep everything above board. And the first chance she had, when transparency and accountability no longer benefited her, she completely abandoned that. And so now I think I have a better grasp of why a lot of people feel betrayed by Sandra Doorley. Her actions completely betrayed what she really believes. And we've talked a lot about the last video. We talked a lot about her behavior and everything. And even going back 4 years, that wide-eyed blank, facial expression that she has. If you go back, you can actually see what her baseline is in just dealing with people. Now, the Rochester District Attorney's Office, or I'm sorry, the Monroe County District Attorney's Office houses Rochester and Webster and several other jurisdictions, and there's been a lot of issues lately, and it's very difficult for. Let me say this. It's difficult for law enforcement to do their job if the public doesn't trust law enforcement, because that distrust basically breeds to the idea that you're not going to do anything anyway. Everything you're doing is just for show. You don't really care. You don't care about the people. You don't care about the situation. And when that happens, when you have that distrust of your elected officials, everything falls apart. Look at Dalton, Illinois right now. If the mayor, if the city council, if the officers on the police department, if anybody manages to keep their job in all that, with the abuses of the office and of the administration that have come down or are suspected of coming down. Of course, we always want to say alleged, right? When those things happen, when you have that distrust, things are almost broken to the point where the only way to fix them is to remove everybody and rebuild. And unfortunately, that process is long, it's tedious, it's expensive, and it's very difficult to know if you're going to make things better or worse in the interim. So there's a lot of things happening right now outside of Sandra Doorley's traffic stop. She's had personnel issues where people have left her office over hostile work environment claims, toxic work environment claims. Rochester PD having some issues where I think they're under a DOJ oversight right now, which happens when a police department is accused of civil rights violations. The Department of Justice will come in and basically oversee the department, and they scrap all the policy and procedure manuals and they proceed to write them from start to finish all over again. and they're there to clean house. So officers with a bad history, supervisors with a bad history, they're looking for any possible way to get rid of that to help maintain, to help maintain the integrity of the department, if that's even possible. So I want to share some of these comments with you because they were absolutely fantastic. So NWF, wonder what would have happened if there was no video of this. Well, this is a great question. And matter of fact, we're actually going to get to that in a later part of the video, because I don't know if you've been paying attention or know about the professional golfer in Kentucky who is facing felony charges for running over a police officer. Like I said, we'll get to that. But the long and short of it is he was released on his own recognizance, meaning without bond. It's a signature bond. He just says, like you do with the traffic ticket, yes, I will be in court on this day. And was still able to make his tee time at the golf course. And like I said, we'll go into that later in the video. But none of the police officers had body cameras on. And when you don't have body cameras, bad things happen. All right. So let's see. Let's go through. Cool, Brader, you talked about what could happen to our convictions in court. Yeah, once you lose public integrity, and once it shows that you have a history of preferential treatment or demanding preferential treatment, once you lose that inability to be objective, it's open season, and defense attorneys are going to be ripping her to shred any way possible. So I keep waiting. I keep waiting to find out how come nobody is talking about. I looked and I still haven't been able to find anything. The investigation still seems to be focused squarely on Sandra Doorley, but nobody's really seems to be talking about the on-scene supervisors or the police chief. And of course, you know, if you've been following my channel for any time at all, you know exactly how I feel about this level of interference and how it should have been handled. So, Tracy, you made a great comment. Great leaders will always make good decisions in the moment it happens. Bad leaders with narcissistic traits will say, if I can go back in time, I would have done it differently. And oh my gosh, did you just, if you could have encaptioned the Sandra Doorley interview any better, I don't know how you would have done it. So the last comment I want to get to is from Tony. Tony's a new subscriber. And Tony, first off, I want to give you an apology. I don't want my channel to be quid pro quo, where you asked a great question, and my response after reading it, I hope you didn't feel like I was giving you the brush off. Your question had so much nuance to it that I really couldn't answer it concisely enough in the comments section without you losing interest and just saying, you know, if you weren't going to answer the question, don't answer the question. So I hope this answers your question. So this is from Tony. So great video. Thank you. Just subscribe. One thing I've not really seen commented on anywhere is when in the initial stop video, she says something like, if you just run my plates, you would know who I am. And the officer replies he was busy watching her vehicle, not running her plates. The follow-up question to that is this an indication that it would be standard practice that the district attorney wouldn't be stopped or dealt with for something like a traffic stop, or would be given other special treatment? Okay. So y'all are a smart audience, so obviously that question's kind of like, okay, so the long and short of it is, when you are, as a police officer, when you initiate a traffic stop, one of the first things you're looking for is compliance with that traffic stop. And one of the main ways that law enforcement officers will judge the compliance of an individual is by how long it takes them to effect the stop. That means from the time they turn on their lights to the time they get behind the vehicle to the time the vehicle pulls over, and the location that they pull over, one thing or another, tells you a lot about compliance. If you have somebody who pulls way off onto the shoulder so that the officer's back isn't directly out in traffic, you can assume that this individual is trying to keep the officer safe. Same thing with pulling into a parking lot, trying to get the officer out of traffic. We've all seen those videos of officers getting hit on roadside stops. We've seen patrol cars and other vehicles get plowed into during traffic stops. They're very, very scary place to be. And officers automatically have divided attention because not only are they watching what the suspect is doing, they're watching what's going on in their vehicle, in their patrol vehicle. They're watching the surrounding vehicles. They're watching the surroundings. Traffic stops are mind-numbingly complex, and that's why a lot of police officers kind of become just a little on the belligerent side when you refer to traffic stops as routine. All right. So when you're looking at license plates tell you a lot of information. In Texas, they can tell you who the lawful registered owner of the vehicle is. They can tell you the insurance status, the registration status, and who the lawful owner is, meaning if there's a lien on it by a bank or a credit union or something like that. You can see all of that information. It comes up with every vehicle registered in the state of Texas, but interstate vehicles, commercial vehicles, that's not always the case. All right. But a license plate check does not tell you who is driving the vehicle. It tells you who the legal owner is. And so I want you to think about it like this. Put yourself in Officer Crisafoli's place, okay? He's trying to effect a traffic stop. It's a speeding violation. It's not uncommon. It's not out of the ordinary. What is out of the ordinary about this stop? The fact that the driver of this vehicle is not stopping, okay? So let's just say he had run the plate. He was multitasking. And he was able to run the plate and see that it's registered to a name he recognized, like Sandra Doorley, okay? So he runs the plate and he's like, oh crap, that's the district attorney. Wait a minute. The district attorney is not stopping for me? No. The district attorney would never do something like that. If at least that's our thought before we see the video. And so he's trying to effect the stop. So when somebody doesn't immediately stop for a law enforcement officer, a variety of thoughts go through their mind. Is there something in the vehicle that they have that they shouldn't? Is there somebody in the vehicle that shouldn't be there? Meaning, is the vehicle stolen? Has a kidnapping occurred? A robbery occurred? A carjacking? Has the district attorney or her family been threatened in some way? Is a further law enforcement response needed? Is this person having a medical condition that needs immediate intervention? So all of these things go through an officer's mind. And as we all know, the traffic stop ends with, I can't believe I'm using this word voluntarily, but the quintessential Karen getting out and explaining why she is above the law. I hate using those terms, but she earned it. So it's not necessarily indicative of anything. So, and that's a misconception that a lot of people have, and I'll tell us. I try not to tell war stories, but I've got one that's prudent to the matter at hand, so I'll go ahead and tell it. So I was working in a very, very rural part of Texas, and I conduct a traffic stop on an individual who was, I think, 20 over the posted speed limit, now that I think, if memory serves me correctly. And so because of my location, it was not unusual for me have to drive in excess of 100 miles an hour to catch up to a vehicle. So because of the divided highway and everything. And so I stop the vehicle, I run the plate, I go up, get the driver's license, and at the time, if you were licensed to carry a firearm in the state of Texas, you were required to show your carry permit to a police officer, and which this individual did. And I go back, I run his driver's license, and nothing shows up to alarm me except for that he's licensed to carry. So he ends up being a judge, and an appointed or elected judge in the state of Texas has the option of having license plates put on their vehicle that identify them as being a judge. That was not the case with this particular vehicle, and nothing came up. So I ended up writing him a ticket, and I remember the look on his face was just incredulous, like, I cannot believe you wrote me a ticket. So I think that was on a Saturday. Monday, the court opens up, and I get a call from the city administrator. And the city administrator wanted to know if I remembered to stop, and I told him I did. And the city administrator told me that this happened to be a sitting judge for the state of Texas. And I said, okay. Well, apparently the judge was upset that a ticket had been written and wanted the ticket dismissed. And I said, I had no idea. I had no idea the individual was a judge. And things snowballed from there. The judge was very adamant that the city dismissed the citation. Ended up going to county court. And one of the things the judge was furious about was I should have known who he was just from running his license plate. Nothing came up. I ran his driver's license. Nothing came up about this individual being a judge. So this idea, some people have this idea that they are way more important and have more clout than what they should. Now, traffic enforcement was my entire position. Okay, it's what I was there for. So yes, I did have discretion over who I wrote tickets to, but if I don't know who somebody is and they're exceeding the speed limit in a manner that makes it unsafe for them to operate a vehicle, they're going to get a ticket. Okay, and yeah, there's discretion. There's there have been times where I've let people off with warnings that maybe I shouldn't, and times I've probably written tickets to people who I probably could have cut a break to. But every case is a little different, all right? But the idea that just because I run your driver's license, and I think this individual was like, did my name not mean anything? I'm like, well, you're not a judge in this area, so I don't know why you'd think I'd know who you are. And being a judge, you're a licensed attorney, so you should know better. And so anyway, Tony, I hope that kind of clarifies that for you. It's not a the amount of information contained in the registration of a license plate is very minimal. All right. And it does very little good for law enforcement officers outside of establishing whether it's registered, whether it's insured, and who the lawful owner is. Outside of that, who knows? All right. So getting back to the other comment about what would happen if there weren't video of this. Interesting you should ask. So Scottie Scheffler is a former PGA professional golf champion who is playing at a golf course in Kentucky, a big PGA tournament. And unfortunately, on Saturday morning, excuse me, contact lens isn't sitting right. On Saturday morning, there was a fatality between a pedestrian and a motor vehicle. Very, very sad situation. So Louisville Police Department, or Louisville Metro, I think is what they call themselves. Louisville Metro Police Department was on scene and trying to direct traffic. Traffic was backed up. Scottie Scheffler is in a Lexus that's identified that it's a PGA sponsored vehicle. That means absolutely nothing to me, and I'm sure unless you are an avid golfer, that probably doesn't mean anything to you anyway. Okay, but same problem. There's no way to know who's actually driving that vehicle. And so what happened is Scottie Scheffler was trying to get around the traffic to get into the club because he wanted to be early for his tee time. And he ignores the direction of a detective who's in full uniform and wearing a reflective vest. And he tries to go around the officer, and he ends up hitting the officer, knocking him to the ground. The officer sustained some minor injuries, I think, to his wrist and knee, tore up his uniform. Scottie Scheffler proceeds to go 10, 20 yards according to the reports, and the officers get him out, place him in hand restraints. And according to one of the reports that I read, Scottie Scheffler asked a ESPN correspondent if there was anything he could do. Okay. The correspondent did try to intervene, at least initially, on Scheffler's behalf, and the officers told him to mind his own business. This guy's going to jail. He just assaulted a police officer, which in the state of Kentucky is a felony, as it is in most jurisdictions. Okay. So he's fingerprinted, he's booked, he's got his photo taken. And somehow, with one felony and 3 serious misdemeanor charges, if I remember right, it was disregard an officer controlling traffic, attempting to get around a police barricade, I think, and one other thing. There's 4 charges. Somehow in all of this, Scottie Scheffler was released ROR, on own recognizance. And like I said earlier in the video, that's just a signature on a piece of paper that says, I will be in court on this day. So I don't know how it is in Kentucky. In the state of Texas, after an arrest, there's a bond hearing to decide, when what your bond is. Apparently they had that, and he was able to get out with his signature. But in Texas, they do the arraignment and everything. But as a general rule, if you have a felony, you are generally not going to be allowed to just sign your signature and walk out. You are going to be required to have some sort of bond. But that didn't happen. So now the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, is calling for an investigation because there is a matter of there's a matter of optics, and the optics on this are terrible. And so the mayor's office wants to know who authorized this individual to get such specialized treatment, basically saying that this is unheard of. This is not the way that things are normally done. And it implies that Scheffler is receiving preferential treatment. Okay. Now, this is a problem for Louisville Metro because they are, in fact, operating under a DOJ mandate. And a lot of this comes back to the Breonna Taylor case and a series of missteps that went into that. If somebody would remind me in the comments, the judge who signed off on the initial search warrant, that's an interesting case. And if you're interested in hearing my take on that, let me know in the comments. But it's a bad look. And so the mayor has ordered the police department to investigate itself to find out how that happened. My personal take on this is that this should really be handled outside of Louisville Metro, and either the state police, the attorney general's office, somebody outside of the police department figure out what's going on. Somebody made the call to let this professional golfer go on his merry way after being charged with a very serious offense with nothing more than a signature. Okay. I watched a video that was posted about 19 hours ago, and it's the prosecuting attorney and Scheffler's attorney arguing about moving the arraignment date. And I got to say, the prosecutor did not come off incredibly strong in that. You can watch the video if you want. It's easy to find. The defense attorney, he acted like he was more annoyed to be in the courtroom over something so ridiculous as moving an arraignment date, which is not uncommon in any court anywhere in the United States. Okay, it happens. But the problem is when you start talking about transparency and accountability, and people who are calling for that are seen giving special treatment, whether that's what you think happened in the Sandra Doorley case, or that's what you think happened in the Scheffler case. Something has happened, and so when you preach that accountability and that transparency, you forfeit a lot of your discretion. So you can have that, but you're going to lose discretion, and you're going to fill up your jail, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen. Okay. I think probably next week I'm going to do a video on officer discretion and just kind of explain my take on that. The problem is under these serious charges, this shouldn't have been a courtesy granted to anybody, but it does show preferential treatment. Now, it's just a matter of finding out who made that call, and they're going to have to be brought to account and explain, probably before a court, or at least an ethics inquiry, why they thought that was appropriate. All right. So, y'all, I'm going to keep an eye on the Sandra Doorley case and see kind of where that leads. I hope this video has been helpful about kind of showing how preferential treatment sometimes just happens at the result of what's going on. One of the comments I saw about the case was an individual told the PGA to just pack up out of Louisville and not even bother having it there if the golfers were subject to arrest, and that would affect millions of dollars of revenue coming into the city. And unfortunately, there's just this entitlement, no harm, no foul kind of thing. Well, I didn't hurt anybody. Well, not the case with the golfer, but even if I did hurt somebody, it wasn't that serious. We don't need to making a huge case about this. Let me do some community service, some photo ops with the department. We'll move on. But that poses a problem, because when people don't have that kind of influence, when they don't have that type of money, or they don't have a reputation or a status, it really does project it projects that justice, which is supposed to be blind, isn't only blind but completely indifferent. And that's not the way the justice system is supposed to work. And so understanding both sides of whether it's the Sandra Doorley investigation, whether it's the Scottie Scheffler investigation, whether he was confused about what happened, although having directed traffic and having people driven their vehicles at me, I can tell you that, yeah, police officers are going to be hot about that. But if you're ever that confused about what an officer wants you to do, why don't you just stop the vehicle, roll down your window, and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. What do you need me to do so that this doesn't happen?" Okay. But understanding both sides is what's going to help you really figure out what needs to be done to move forward to help criminal justice actually achieve its original goal, is to dispense justice, and to do it in a way that's completely fair and unbiased. But like I said, that's going to take a top-down change. So I'm really curious to see what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've got some good stuff coming up this week, so y'all stay tuned for that. I'm Derek Judd, the Cowboy Criminologist for Cowboy Criminology. Y'all have a great day.